Hello, welcome to everydayhdr.com. Today I'm going to talk about how you can extract some pretty serious dynamic range from a single raw file to create some pretty awesome portraits of animals, whether that animal be from the zoo or from your dog or your cat. Whatever you want to extract the dynamic range for a portrait, pet portrait. This is one way you can do it. And we're also going to make a nice black background to remove all those distracting electric fences, because we don't want to make this elephant look like it's got an electric fence behind it. That's just not cool. Alright, so we're going to start on Adobe Camera Raw. I just opened the file in Adobe Camera Raw. And usually the first thing I do when I come into Adobe Camera Raw is just go ahead and hit auto to see what the auto settings are going to do. And it made my elephant a little dark. And that's okay. We'll just go ahead and increase the shadows a little bit to start bringing out some of that shadow area. Increase the highlights a little bit, bring out those areas. And we'll increase the contrast and maybe do a little bit of exposure because it made it a little too dark for us. Basically what I'm trying to do is look at this image and say, what do I want the elephant to look like? Who cares what the background looks like, because we're going to make it black anyway. I want to make that elephant look good. And that's the thing that you should be considering when you're in Adobe Camera Raw and doing something like this is, what is my focal point and how do I make it look good? Now, good is also subjective to the individual that's doing it. Well, one individual thinks is good, someone else isn't, but that's what you as an artist get to do. So I'm also going to increase the clarity a little bit too. That's really going to help bring out those defined areas in the elephant. And I think right now we have a really good solid base that we can work off of in Photoshop to help us extract some more dynamic range. So I'm going to go ahead and press Open Image. Now, I'm going to fit this to the screen by clicking on my magnifying glass, right click, Fit on Screen. Go to now I want to duplicate this layer, so press Ctrl J. I always duplicate the layer when I'm doing anything like this because I don't want my background to be affected. And I don't want my background to be affected because if I ever need anything from that background file, I know it's always there. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that for now. So now what we're going to do is make another layer that's going to go on top of this one and fill that with black. Press Shift F5 to fill it with black. Select black and fill it. And now I'm going to bring that layer 1 on top of it and make a selection of just the elephant. I'm going to use the quick selection tool because I want to make a quick selection. Pretty nifty how they worded these tools in Photoshop, huh? Someone got paid a lot of money to come up with a quick selection tool. Okay. And we're just going to trace the outer areas of this elephant until the whole elephant gets selected. Now, I'm also going to go ahead and reduce my brush size a little bit and press Alt and click in this area, and you're going to see a little negative sign, so it's not going to accept those areas. And we'll just get a little bit more over here too. Okay, now I'm going to press Refine Edge. And what we're doing with refining edge is just that. We want to refine our edge of our selection so that we can get those hair follicles back. And this is one of those really powerful tools that they introduced in, I think, Photoshop CS5 and 6 with this Refine Edge tool. Introduced in Photoshop CS5 and then it came into CS6, and it's very powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure Smart Radius is selected. Your view might look like this when you first come into it, and that's fine. You can always change that view. I prefer this black and white view because I know that the white area is what I selected and the black area is what's not selected, and now I want to refine that. So when I paint with the Refine Edge tool, it's going to go ahead and help me bring out those hairs on the outside of the elephant that I couldn't quite get with the quick selection tool. I'm going to do it over here too because there were some hairy hairs over here. Oh, a little too much. So if I press Alt, I can go ahead and remove the too much that I selected. Now you're going to see here that sometimes it selects parts of the elephant on the inside of that selection. We don't want that because we don't want those areas to end up being black. So I can press Alt and just click those areas to make sure that they remain untouched in the mask. And just go through that elephant and get rid of all those areas that might have been too selected. And press O. Before we press OK, we're going to decontaminate colors. What decontaminate colors does is if there was any color in the background of this image, like the green that was there, we don't want that to show through. So we'll just go ahead and increase that to something like 25%. So that's going to go ahead and kind of desaturate or decontaminate those colors so that they don't exist in the layer mask that we create. We want this to be a new layer with the layer mask. So press OK. And now we can delete this layer one below. And now you see we have a nice selection of our elephant. Now there's some areas here that got a little too much selected, and that's okay. We can just go to our mask and press brush, B for brush, and make sure we're painting in black on those areas, and go ahead and get rid of those areas that might have been too much selected. There's another piece right here. Oops, I was painting with white. I'm going to press X to paint with black. Alright, so now we want to go ahead and start sprucing this image up a little bit, start bringing some of the character out in this elephant. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a curves adjustment layer. One of the first things I always start with is a curves adjustment layer, and make a slight S curve with it. So pull down the darks a little bit and pull up the lights a little bit. Now, the next thing I want to do is really accentuate these cracks. And you can make a dodge and burn layer, and you can burn those areas in, but that takes a long time. So just go ahead and do this. Click on your elephant layer, zoom in real tight into one of these colors that you want to select, go to select, go to color range, and then select one of those lighter crack colors like that one, and press OK. Now you see it's selecting all the cracks for us. Pretty nifty, huh? So now we're going to make a curves adjustment layer. When we do that, it's automatically going to make a mask for that area that we just selected, right? See that? And bring that down. Now I'm really pulling out the darks that are inside those areas, inside those cracks, to really accentuate them and bring them out some more. It is a little too much, so we can drop the fill a little bit, and it did get some areas that I didn't want to be affected. So I'm going to select the mask, press the B for the brush tool, or go ahead and select brush. Make sure that my color is black. If you ever need to set those, press D for default, and then I'll put them to black and white, and whatever you paint in black, we'll go ahead and remove those areas that you hit a little too much, like the eyes. I don't want those to be hit so much. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the highlights. So click back on that elephant, go to select, go to color range, and then get a nice little like that gray right there on the crownal cap. And this is going to go ahead and select those highlights for me. Again, press curves, and it's going to make a mask on there just for those highlighted areas. Pretty neat, huh? So what I'm going to do is go into the highlights and increase those highlights a little bit. Now it's a little too stark. If you see here, these really stark edges, I don't like that. And it happens on both of these layers. But if you click on the mask and go to properties, you can feather that mask and really kind of just blend those areas in and get a nice smooth transition from one to the next. So make that a pretty high amount, like 7 to 10 pixels will be good. And do the same thing with the black one also that we did for the cracks. And go ahead and increase that as well. So there's the difference. You see, we brought out the blacks, pushed those forward, and then brought out those highlights a little bit. Push the blacks back and the highlights forward. So now what I also want to do is just kind of add a little bit more oomph to the character of this animal. So I'm going to go to layer copy 1, press Ctrl J, switch that to soft light, and then go to filter, other, high pass, and make a high pass sharpen of that selection. So there you have it. Really quick, really easy. It looked like a lot longer than it actually was, but once you get used to it, you'll be doing that in no time. So that's how you make better animal portraits, whether they're from the zoo or your dog or your cat, whatever it may be. You can really start extracting some dynamic range from a single raw file, as long as that raw file is a good zero exposure value. You don't want to go too much on the +1s or the +2s. Just go ahead and stick with a nice well exposed image, and you can extract a lot of dynamic range from that. Again, this is everydayhdr.com. I am Blake Rudis, and I hope you have a great weekend.